Hey Denchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and I might as well throw in the towel because everyone else has reviewed this album already. Kendrick Lamar's third studio album, To Pimp a Butterfly, and this is his 2015 follow-up to Good Kid, M.A.A.d City, which was his last album, and I can say that I gladly kind of stayed away from that record as it had more of a pop appeal, and I'm not really into the pop sound, but with this record there's a lot of hype surrounding it. One of the lead singles, The Black or the Berry, that came out I think a little over a month ago, definitely caught my ear, and I absolutely love that single, so I was definitely hyped for a new Kendrick Lamar record. The lead single, I actually wasn't crazy about, but as we get into this album, I was absolutely amazed by how great this is, and this could very well be the best rap record I've ever heard in my life. So, without further ado, let's dig into this masterpiece. First of all, I'd just like to say this album's production is insanely good. We've got features like Thundercat with this heavy bass track intro called Wesley's Theory, and that's definitely one of my favorite tracks on the record. There's so many tracks on this album that just make me laugh so much, and that's something that I really could use in more albums, like with a mixture of music and progressions and just humor throughout, and I wish more records would do that, but they don't seem to. So one of my other favorites is King Kunta. That one, definitely very impressive. I love the 90s and 80s rap vibes that he throws on this. I think this is the type of direction that rap music should be going right now, because if more rappers and hip-hop producers decided to do more stuff like this, and I'm not saying they should do exactly the same record, that would just be pointless, but if they tied more of these sounds and styles and themes into their music, then it would be so much more interesting to me than just the regular weed, money, women, so much generic garbage, and why I usually don't like the pop rap scene, like I've mentioned before, 2 Chainz and Lil Wayne, Drake. Those artists I just stay away from because it's so cringy to hear them talk about these themes that just really aren't very conscious, and that's why I like this record a lot. It talks about real political issues. Even the album's cover is a bunch of black gentlemen, we assume brutally murdering a judge, and not brutally murdering, but he's dead because he's got the X's over his eyes. So there's that. Aside from the artwork, this album is definitely an interesting piece. I'm just gonna get the tracks that I didn't like out of the way, the first of which was the track with Rhapsody called Complexion, and this, along with the thing that I don't get is The Black or the Berry was an amazing single and fits perfectly into this record in a certain spot, but surrounded by this track are these two kind of boring tracks, and Kendrick goes absolutely ham on The Black or the Berry, but around the surrounding track, Complexion and You Ain't Gotta Lie, which I felt kind of, I didn't really get the saying, but I had heard Cascade's song, Ain't Gotta Lie, and this track really reminded me of that, not only lyrically, but for some other reasons, mainly lyrically, but I don't want to compare rap to Cascade at all, but that's just what I was picking off, so I didn't really like this track that much, or Complexion, but the rest of the album, fantastic, man. I was so impressed by this style and going ham that Kendrick was able to do. I never liked on, let's say, the song M.A.A.d City on his last album, he kind of does this voice where he goes like, and I never really was crazy about that. I prefer his kind of live sound, like at his Grammy performance with Imagine Dragons last year. I love that so much. That made me kind of get into Kendrick, and he went absolutely ham on stage, and that was definitely one of the top performances, I think, or live performances of 2014, and I was super impressed at this guy that I never really listened to before then, and now I'm finally getting into him, and I'm going to have to do another listen through Good Kid, M.A.A.d City, because apparently that album was also very awesome, but I'm not sure if it can stand up to this one, because this album was fantastic. I think I mentioned some 80s and 90s vibes. There's some Eminem sounds, early Eminem, that might appeal to some older listeners, and as well as the younger generation like me. Even someone who's into electronic music like me. There's a track called Hood Politics, and that one I kind of thought had like a little future bass sound. There's a little bit of new disco that I'm hearing in here, and it's just strange because Kendrick combines all these styles together. I'm not sure if he helped with the production at all, but at least his producers combined all these different styles, and his vocals seem so immensely into the record that I just can't get over how awesome this sounds, and I really enjoyed this record as a whole. Kendrick kind of builds up this album on this theme with this poem leading up to this 12-minute track at the end, Mortal Man, where he recites the poem in full, kind of gets into this little rap, talks about when junk hits the fan, are you still going to be a fan? Turns out he's talking to the one and only Tupac, and this concept was kind of mind-blowing because he centers this album around Tupac, and I think he's mentioned it in another song, but I just thought it was kind of crazy how he mentioned a tie around that. I think I heard from a source that he centered the record around this interview, one of his favorite interviews of Tupac, and picked and did snippets and kind of had him talk to Tupac and Tupac talk back from someone who's been long dead, but he used this theme, and I'm just really impressed by this. Even though it was a 12-minute track, managed to keep my attention. It was one of my favorite tracks on the record. On this album, we get a kind of different version of the single I, which I actually liked so much better. I didn't like the original single that much, but the live version that he uses on this album definitely fits in better with the context of the record, talking about stage life and his life as a really world-famous rapper, like while his friends and where he grew up is kind of left behind, he is rapping about all these things and how he kind of misses the life he had before, and kind of ties in with this nice crowd, and however you want to say it, this track is definitely better than the single. I don't know really how else to explain this record other than listen through it the entire way. It's absolutely beautiful in its own way. Kendrick goes ham. Like I said, the only tracks I really didn't like were the boring, kind of let down tracks around the Black or the Berry. This album is going to get a 9.5. I can't bring myself to give it a 10 because of those two tracks that I just was really bored by, but the rest of the album is absolutely crazy good, and I'm comparing it to something like Porter Robinson's Worlds, where I absolutely loved every single track on the record. If you would have cut these out and fit it in a little better, it would have been a solid 10. It's just how I feel. Other than that, this album is great. You have to listen to it, and I really sincerely hope you do. So there we have it, Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. See you guys later.